There's your time.
Okay, you're good. Do we need to drop a light here, or is that fine? Do we change the lights here?
That doesn't affect us, so it's okay.
You want to know how to do this?
No.
Can't turn the lights on?
But we never showed it.
Thanks.
Oh, he did it.
Can I proceed?
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Morning, everyone.
I'm done.
Afternoon, everyone.
Great.
Guess
Thanks a
we're
lot.
past morning now. Thanks for coming. Sorry, there's a couple seats up front and in the middle here if you guys want to squeeze on in. I'm Vic. You can follow me on Twitter if you like. I have a few tweets, hopefully, that are going to schedule as we go through the talk here. I hope I haven't timed it quite that well, but let's hope the time zone on TweetDeck worked properly. All right, so I've been invested in Joomla for many years. Probably many of you recognize me from our Joomla web shop called Anything Digital, which we run out of Wisconsin. We got any Wisco in the house? Yeah, represent. All right. So we make extensions for Joomla. I know I spoke with some of you about our SEO tools like SH44Ceph. We also have a new startup, which of course many of you have seen in the lobby for monitoring and maintaining your site, called Watchfully, and we build that with our partners in Switzerland. So we've really invested a lot of time in Joomla and really centered our lives around it. I had a professional career in academia before retiring to do Joomla full time. And the SH44Ceph author was a professional engineer, and we both left to basically devote our efforts full time to Joomla. And we're Anything Digital and Watchfully are both sponsoring the event, and we're really proud to be here, see your colleagues, and of course make new friends and new contacts with everyone here. So welcome and thank you for attending. I want to talk today about an issue that's been it bubbles up every couple of years, or maybe a couple times every 2 years in the Joomla community about Joomla's role in enterprise. And this question kind of gets asked in various ways. But what I always like to say, and I'm going to include myself in this, so please don't take offense, but I always kind of look at the Joomla community historically as being something of a bit of a drama queen, right? We kind of complain a lot, and we talk a lot, and oh shit, we're leaving, we're forking from Mambo, we're going to go over here. And so that happens quite routinely in Joomla, and so the people who are new in the room, if that worries you, it's okay. It happens, it's kind of the regular up and down, you just kind of have to ride the waters. But the things you hear a lot are, Joomla doesn't have this, so it can't be used in this big place, or it doesn't have that, Drupal's better, right? We have this joke in some of our chat rooms, right? Every Drupal conversation, you've got all the topics that you're talking about, and every Drupal event, they all end up with whitehouse.gov. That's like, every conversation leads to that story. But I try not to define ourselves by what other projects are doing. And what I wanted to do today was look at what exactly enterprise rollouts are, what they mean to me. Hopefully I can convince you if you disagree, or we can talk about it. I would love to have an open discussion at the end. My talk will not go long, because I actually speak really quickly, and if you can't understand me, please just give me one of these so I slow down. But this is kind of, I think, the idea that I hear a lot. If only we had this feature in the core, the world would be all sunshine and roses, okay? And we could compete with the big projects, and I kind of just talked about that a little bit. So before we start, it's probably best for us to define exactly what we mean. There's some seats if you want to come in, guys, if you're staying at the front. We probably need to define exactly what we're talking about when we say, what is enterprise or what is corporate, right? Because they probably mean different things to different people. So when you say, what's the role of Joomla in enterprise, I don't want you to think that it's like some lost episode of Star Trek. It's not, Captain Kirk had to make a website on a distant planet. No. When we think of it, you probably think corporate. When I say enterprise, you think big corporate America. And this is a great clip, of course, from Apple's 1984 commercial. And they were making fun of all the IBM drones at the time, right? So often when I say enterprise, people are thinking corporate America, cubes, rigid structures, and all that. But I think that makes a mistake. I think when you think about enterprise, to define it by who's paying the bill or footing the cost of your build, to say it's a corporate rollout and call that enterprise, I don't think that's accurate. Okay, so corporate versus individual use. When I say enterprise, what I mean is an organization of people that have to come together to do something usually big. Not always, but probably complex. Okay? So you have a lot of roles, you have a lot of stakeholders, you have a lot of different types of content, a lot of different needs, okay? That might be nonprofit, it might be corporate, it might be volunteer driven, But if it's going to be a group dynamic, then that's what I talk about as enterprise. Okay? Because those are the areas where you need a lot of complicated controls and roles and management. Okay? So that's kind of what I've been thinking of. And I'm going to talk about enterprise and corporate together. And then we can just kind of have a discussion about it at the end after I said my piece, and you can disagree or not. We'll see where we get. Okay, so just to give you a quick example, I looked for this. I searched for, I don't know, lawyer in Milwaukee or something. Not that I need a lawyer or anything, but you know, if you're building a website for like a local brochure site for a local business, for example, this is going to be an example of a corporate site. But a site of this size, and I don't know anything about these guys, probably not even a Joomla site, but a site of this kind of complexity, if you will, probably doesn't have too much in the way. You might have one webmaster who's responsible for all the admin, all the maintenance, and maybe even rolling out updates that get emailed to him, you know, as a Word document or something. So in this case, you've got a corporate environment, but not enterprise.
What?
Oh wait.
I'll call you back. Let me call you back.
Thank you. Compare this to Oklahoma State University. This is a Joomla website or a series of Joomla websites. You can probably, I've widened it here so you can see it's using front page slideshow. I mean, it's hard to miss front page slideshow, of course. This is a series of sites. It's non-corporate. Okay, it's a different site for each department, etc. A lot of stakeholders, a lot of different roles. This is non-corporate but enterprise. Okay, so just a couple examples there. So it's pretty easy if you think about group versus individual to define enterprise, and then who's paying the bill, corporate versus individual for a corporate rollout. So now that we have an understanding of that, or just kind of defining that for you, what are the features that you might find in an enterprise or a corporate rollout? And really what you might find on any website depending on the spec. So what I'm going to do is start with this big list of features. We'll talk a little bit about them. I'll try not to go into too much detail. If you don't understand one of these, and I think you all will, but if you don't, just say, hey, I don't get that, Vic, and I'll go over it again. So if you go and you look at all the main content systems that you can find, basically you're going to run into kind of a similar set of features. Okay, so pick any top 10, and you're going to get a list, a really massive list. And I'm kind of breaking my own rule here. You know, any slide, any presentation with bullet points, you know, is, you know, so I've got like the biggest bullet point slide ever. And I'm gonna like stay on this for 10 minutes. So, so common features, right? Publishing workflows. By that I mean you have someone who's making the content, someone who's doing the editing, the grammatical corrections, someone who's approving it, and then someone who's publishing it. So these customized workflows where people are getting notifications at each step of the way. So really complicated ways of making sure your content gets properly vetted and approved by the people in your structure. Okay. Publishing workflows. Content tagging. This has been all over the mailing list recently. We need to tag our content. We need multi-tagging. It's going to be multi-category. You know, we have a lot of talk about that. You know, and I guess WordPress, for example, really is great at content tagging. Right? That's one of their big things. A/B testing. So depending on what your conversion is on your page, you want someone to click a button or make a phone call or fill out a form, whatever your conversion is, an A/B test would be. Do I get more conversions if it looks like this or acts like this versus another layout? Database abstraction layer. Can I use different databases to manage my data? That's pretty easy. Document management. A lot of big corporations, especially educational institutions, legal institutions, that sort of thing, they have a really big requirement for robust document management. Okay, it's not just I'm going to upload a file through JCE and put it in a folder with his username or something. Okay, talking about really robust document management. Forms management, right? Creating forms, managing the responses. Media management, you'll find later in the talk, super popular. Everyone here, I mean, I think JCE basically cornered the market. I always use them as an example in almost every talk I give. Basically because they have such an improvement in media management, right? And that's really popular in most rollouts. Groups, or ACL, in Joomla we call them access control lists, right? Well, lots of people call them other things, but it's just giving different roles, different permissions. Am I going too fast for any of this? Everyone with me? All right. Message boards and forum. So this has kind of been replaced by social media, which is like over here somewhere. But yeah, a way for users to interact and collaborate. Hierarchical content. And in Joomla we call that nested category structure, which replaced our non-nested earlier category structure, right? Multi-server or cluster support, probably we call that cloud support these days, or content delivery networks perhaps. Support for LDAP or Active Directory, so that you can authenticate your users based on perhaps your existing Microsoft user base, right? Especially as companies move piecemeal the different online assets or the different IT assets, right? So you definitely need to stay connected while you're going through that transition. Multilingual and localization, as every business essentially has moved across the planet and people don't care about putting their credit cards online, this has become more and more important. And localization maybe more than multilingual, but both are important, of course. A bunch of payment information, payment processing, of course. We want to be able to make payments on our sites. E-commerce, depending on the type of site. Again, these are just general features. I'm going to pare them down to corporate and enterprise in just a minute. PCI compliance, okay, so if you're taking credit cards, you need to be storing your data and managing it correctly and safely through a set of standards. That's PCI compliance. HIPAA privacy standards. If you're not in America, you might not be familiar with this, but that's a standard we use for protecting medical records and that sort of information. SEO management, one of the consistently most important things that we see both as developers. Certainly we make an SEO product, but at Joomla events that we organize, those are one of the most attended sessions. And people who are running sites for profit are really interested in SEO for obvious reasons. Mentioned social networking. Syndication, two kinds here. You have the sitemap XML, that's really SEO related, but also RSS syndication or that sort of thing. Version control, this ties a little bit up into publishing workflows where you could be creating content, someone could be creating a new version, and you'll be able to go forward and backwards through your versions of your content and publishing them, comparing them, and making sure things go right over time. I haven't done a lot of that, but in some situations you need to be doing really good version control, and the best example would be Wikipedia, for example. You can always roll back, compare, and do everything. Wiki's obviously built around version control. W3C compliance, right? So you need your HTML, XHTML, and CSS meeting standards, and then a bunch of things like backups. Of course, we all should be doing backups, security monitoring, intrusion detection, long-term support, which is, we've been hearing about that at this meeting, and extensibility or customization. Okay, so we've got a big list, a giant list of features. Now, not all of these, and really beautiful bullet points, don't you think?
Yes.
Beautiful. So, which of these are now appropriate for, or common, or would you need for an enterprise rollout? I'm going to color code these, and if I can get my colors, I always mix up purple and magenta, so if I mix it up later, don't get upset at me. So basically the enterprise ones here are just tagged in yellow. Publishing workflows, if it's just you don't need a publishing workflow, okay? But if you have a group of people, that might be important. Database abstraction layers can be important if you're doing an enterprise because you may have data sources coming from a lot of places. Groups and ACL, obviously if you have more than one person and you want to manage their roles, you need that. Again, multiple people, depending on your systems, Active Directory support. Multilingual and localization, put that in for enterprise. If you have translators coming in, you need to control their access so they can translate and maybe not change your administrative areas. HIPAA and privacy standards, of course, if you have patients, you need to manage those. If you have people with multiple access of multiple people to patient records, you need to be able to control that and manage it, document it, and version control that is discussed. So these are the features in our big list that would be enterprise appropriate. Yes?
What about audit management, like government audit, that kind of thing? Because you're talking about HIPAA, that might be part of an enterprise issue.
Absolutely. This list is by no means authoritative. Okay. And in HIPAA, of course, you would need auditing. Would that be a tool you build in, or something you'd add on later? Could be both, I guess. So certainly that definitely be on this list also.
So you could also talk about archiving.
Absolutely. That kind of ties in with version control and backup. It's like a combination almost, right? Yeah, sure. Oh, but for patient records.
For auditing.
Right.
Because you want the paper trail.
Right, exactly. Yeah, especially like patient records where nurses are touching, the doctors are touching, and who touched the document and changed what. Very important stuff. Okay, so how many of these does Joomla provide us out of the box?
Groups.
I'm going to tell you, like a couple. Right? So, the database abstraction layer, which we just heard about yesterday, actually. Groups, which came in Joomla 2.5. Multilingual, which came in 2.5. And that's about it. So if you're pitching this to me, I mean, don't use this slide because no one's going to choose Joomla based on this slide, right? Right? All right, well, let's table that. We'll come back to it. All right. What about corporate? So now we've got a different color scheme here. I've left the enterprise one so you can see. And then for corporate, what I've done is looked at common requests with big corporate clients, large corporate clients, okay? And I don't want to go through these too much, but tagging tends to be big. The forms management, the document management, the media management, those are super popular that we talked about. Cluster support or cloud support, content delivery networks for performance, they're all tied in here. Obviously, we get a lot of requests for e-commerce sites, okay? So anything to do with payments is important. SEO, companies are, especially if they're for-profit, they want to be up there. They're really relying on organic traffic in many cases. Syndication ties also into SEO. And a lot of these things down here, backup, security monitoring, these are super important for companies. Are you delivering that, or do they have an internal delivery process for that? Really important. Long-term support, right? Your clients want to be able to rely on you and rely on your systems that they're going to be stable and solid and working. And of course, most likely you've got some customization to do in there. Okay, so we got another big-ass list, right? What does Joomla provide? Well, I've kind of hashed out everything that it doesn't bring in here. So we've got media management, the Joomla Media Manager. We really do a lot with that. Syndication and extensibility. So we seem to kind of have a really poor list. What's wrong with Joomla? Why are we still using it when it really, look at the features it's missing. What did I do?
Extensibility.
Extensibility, good answer. Oh wow, I wasn't even trying to ask a question there. Stole my thunder. Right, there is extensibility, and we actually said these are kind of conceptual ideas that we put together and just looked at enterprise versus corporate. But what I really wanted to do in preparation for this, and I want to give Steve Burge credit for giving me this idea, is I sent out a survey to my colleagues and also some of our customers and clients and said, please fill out this survey and tell us what you require for your enterprise rollouts. Okay? And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the survey. Not much, because it's boring, right? Here's just kind of a list of questions. We put all the features down one side and said rate them from 1 to 5. And then depending on how many votes they got, we tagged it all up and gave each one a score. Okay? No complex weighting. This was worth 5 times as much as that. 1 vote, basically. So it was nothing really complicated. Results are preliminary, of course, but we had mostly very experienced Joomla users, 4 years or greater. We had nobody down here in the beginner area at all, or even intermediate experience level. And the roles were primarily builders and developers, site administrators, along with some project management and marketing guys, because I told savvy guys to make sure they all filled it out. So really we didn't have any of the beginner users, the end users, entry-level folks, okay? Mostly people like you in this room, okay? I would guess. So what do we find? We split the different category, or the different types of features up into 3 areas: content, infrastructure, and standards. So this is the kind of all the features that have to do with content: tagging, workflow. I'll go through them, but I talked about them already. The nested categories, version control, document management, media management, forms management, our bulletin boards, access control, and multilingual. Okay, and what's really interesting here is that access control really performed the best in our survey. This was the #1 feature when it came to content. And that's really great. Joomla 2.5 has that, right? And if we look at what Joomla has again, I'll just throw it up here. It's nested categories, Joomla 2.5, access control, and media management. So this kind of reinforces the idea that even though all of us in this room use Joomla, the top performing items, only about half of them, a little less than half, are actually in Joomla by default. When we go to infrastructure, okay, this is where we bring in our data abstraction layer, Active Directory, cloud cluster support, syndication, social networking, payments, A/B testing, and SEO management. SEO is the main one, okay? This is the #1 thing that people want. And Joomla, as you know, provides no SEO tools at all. 0 tools. Okay? The only thing it provides in this list is syndication in terms of RSS feeds, but it does not provide sitemap.xml, for example. Okay? These things are not built into Joomla. The last thing I'll quickly mention is just the standards: W3C, HIPAA, and PCI. These are important in some instances, but more commonly in our survey, it was just the W3 standards for your markup. So, just to kind of summarize. Oh yeah.
I was just going to make a comment and see if you agree, and that is that you didn't really have any end users, people who would be at the company doing the content. I noticed that, things like tagging and stuff would be important to those kinds of folks, but it's low on that list, probably because, as developers, we may not see that as important. But I know from the end user perspective, a lot of times those kinds of things are important. So, and workflow too. Workflow is something that a content person, somebody who's writing stuff would want to have in the system. So, and I noticed that was low too.
So the question that we asked in the survey was, for your enterprise rollouts, what was important to you or your clients? So, right. So we're hoping that the responses, and we can only take that at its word, that they reflected the needs of the individual or the client. So we couldn't really segregate based on whether or not it was one or the other. But I mean, you make a good point, right? Some clients will say we need that, and then, I mean, not to take tagging as an example, but any example, part of our job is to say, no, you don't need that 1980 Atari music playing in the background. That's kind of our job, right? So some of these answers are going to be weighted by our own personal, obviously.
Okay, I got one too. For a couple of slides ago in your graphs you showed that a number of different features like ACL, and you say that Joomla doesn't have I'm sorry, I meant Active Directory and LDAP. That stuff is in the Joomla core and has been since 1.5, but you indicated on your slides that it's not there.
That's actually true. I'm sorry.
I know you have. So I was just curious if there was different.
Well, that's good, and what other ones?
Head back, I'd have to.
Okay.
Multilingual.
The multilingual on the slide before that.
Oh, I see. On this slide, you mean?
On this one, the one before it too.
I got you. I bet you that was
and they're multilingual.
That was a delete there. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
That
I
was
just want to make sure
typo.
that we were all on the same page.
No, you're exactly right. I missed that on the slide. That's a mistake. All right, good. And here, the LDAP is in Joomla core.
That's from 1.5 on.
5 minutes left?
15.
Thank you.
And those database abstraction, that's a Joomla 1.6.
Thank you. And I actually said that in the earlier slide, so that's an error. That's an oversight. Thank you. Okay.
Just making sure.
No, thank you. First time giving this talk, so I'll make those corrections before I post the slides. So clearly, out of the box, then there's a lot to be lacking, except for my mistakes on the slide, of course. There's a lot of things that Joomla doesn't have in the core. And remember, kind of the arguments I hear or the discussions I see in the community are, why isn't this in there already? Because I could do so much more. So that's kind of the angle I'm taking it from. So why use Joomla at all? And so we just simply asked that question in our survey also. Now we just have a few things here that we asked, and I'll quickly go through them. These are new. We asked for large-scale enterprise implementations. What were the main reasons you chose Joomla? So we can guess all we want, but I said, well, let's just ask and find out. So we said, is it because of ease of customization? And I think I made a little mistake here because I also had extensibility, and they're pretty close. Brand recognition, cost, features, licensing, or local expertise, the availability of local expertise. And we did have an other, but nobody responded that there was another reason, so I just left that out. So this is what we found. Actually, it was kind of interesting. The main reason was extensibility, and you guys actually brought that up earlier. We can actually build on Joomla in a pretty robust way. It provides a great platform for us to go with. But here's what's really interesting. Features was the second best performing stat. So, I mean, I just spent, 20 minutes kind of rhetorically arguing that didn't have enough features, right? But I think users actually, despite saying these features there or not there, we can argue about that all day, it's still, the features that it has are important and necessary, and I would say sufficient given, the popularity of this project. Customization and extensibility, I would probably, put those together and make a really big graph there. So really, those corporate rollouts really rely on the ability and our desire to either customize or bolt on existing applications, Joomla extensions, or Joomla services, right? So if that's the case, I'm kind of struggling with why are we so worried about getting everything in the core if we're so happy that it's such an extensible platform, right? I'm actually, and that's the part that I've been struggling with a little bit, I guess. And in reality, when you roll out these big implementations, do we have many people here who rolled out really what you would consider really big enterprise or corporate implementations? Can I get some hands? And would you say that for whatever solution you used, let's just call it solution agnostic, did you implement it out of the box?
No.
Did anyone implement a large-scale project out of the box, whatever platform?
Never.
A new website out of the box, Joomla.
Well, you could get a Joomla brochure site, throw on a template, and change a couple of default demo content, and you could do that. But that's not what we're talking about. I think there seems to be some myth or urban legend in the community that if we just had these features, we could roll it out of the box and it'd be no problem. But that's just not realistic on any platform, especially for things that we often, or the community often, holds ourselves up to. WordPress and Drupal. I mean, Drupal in particular, it is such a high barrier to entry, and you have to custom code almost everything to get the end result. I think our expectations are really skewed for some reason, right? So the question shouldn't be is Joomla ready for enterprise? I think the question is, are you ready to deliver an enterprise service built on the Joomla platform? That's what I think we should be asking ourselves. Okay? So, it's all about services, and you can see the services out there. There's such a huge opportunity for us to be doing that, and to be worried about having this little thing in the core, that little thing in the core. There's already so much available out of the box and available for customization. It seems like a moot argument to me.
So, you're talking about people want things to be in the core. How much of that do you think is attributable to the fact that all these different extensions, each one has a different administrator interface that's totally different?
Or may
Great
or may not be
question.
supported in 6 months, or may not make it into the 3.0 build when you need to launch, or may just break one day and no one's going to support
Great.
you.
Oh, these are really great comments. So let me address 2 of them. Absolutely, the lack of a consistent UI. Not that it wasn't. There was obviously UI elements available to developers, but limited, so they expanded. So that has caused challenge, especially for beginners. And Joomla is actually. I'll come back to your comment in a second. Joomla, I think, is a victim of its own success. It hits such a sweet spot. Actually, I have a slide on it, I believe. It hits such a sweet spot. I'll come back to it. It hits such a sweet spot that you can get in, you can use it easy, you can really do something quickly, and you get this expectation that it should do more. And I think that it kind of, we almost step on our own foot in that way because we just expect so much because its barrier to entry is so low and its power is so high. I'll get to you in just 1 sec. Thank you. And to your comment, is it supported, right? Is it going to be supported? My challenge to you is, if you are offering an enterprise class service built around the Joomla platform, that's your job to make sure that's the case. Okay? You hire a developer that you know is going to be there, and if he's not, you have a backup. You need disaster recovery. You need developer. I mean, it's a big deal to provide professional, reliable services to enterprise. And if you're a single guy in a shop by yourself and you think that you're going to score those big clients, they're going to be looking for all those things to make sure that you can deliver on what you're promising.
But if you're in the enterprise, like a lot of people here are selling their business, but not everybody is. A lot of us are in corporate, and we're still having to roll out. And I don't have a team of 15 developers to go back and full time. I need to use the community because it's fantastic. That's why I picked Joomla. I can't assume that I have to have every custom single thing that I need built and then have backups for maintaining that for 2 years in the future. It's not a practical business model.
So I would say you need to hire an enterprise, a company that specializes in delivering those enterprise services, so you don't have to have your team. That's what I would say.
Hey, if I had money growing on a tree, all would be well with the world.
Go ahead. I have to finish up. I'm almost done. He's in the back first. I'm sorry.
You said Joomla doesn't offer any SEO management.
Right.
What should a designer do? There you can design the website for its clients, so that the site will be at the top.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother talk. See me afterwards. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of things you can do. Last question before I finish.
Yeah, adding to what she was saying a minute ago, I'm in corporate also. And I'm a one-man shop running about 16 different sites for my corporation. I was talking to Paul Orwig last night for a few minutes about the JED. I really love the JED, and I do read the reviews and to see if some extension that's out there is seemingly a good one. But I'm always going to go for, if I can, the commercial option. I want to buy the thing because I have a trust factor there.
Right.
That next year, the guy's still going to be working on that extension. Otherwise, I'm sunk because I don't have a big team either. And I had asked him, is there some way that we could come up with a better business bureau type rating system for some of these guys that are out there building these extensions? Because the trust factor is not there.
Absolutely, and it's hard to build that. I mean, it's a big deal. Enterprise and corporate are big lifts. And I guess I'm going to run out of time. I'm almost going to have to conclude by saying the power of Joomla is not, the community is strong. We all agree on that. But the power in Joomla is not from the Joomla itself, it's the people who are implementing. And if you're implementing at that level, you need to be delivering those services in a professional way. It's not the Joomla that's going to lift it for you. It's just going to enable you to do that lift. And I have like 6 more slides, but I'm going to end there. And I welcome all your comments. And I'd love to hear feedback on whether or not you think Joomla is appropriate for enterprise, or whether you think you are appropriate for enterprise. Thank you very much.
I thought the talk was till 1.
You just told me 5 minutes.
45 minutes. Then we started at 12. Yeah.
You want me to finish?
Yeah,
Yes, please. Oh, okay.
All right.
I'll leave it on.
If you guys want to let me, I'll go.
It's
Do you
on.
see a lot of requests for SLAs in your enterprise deployment?
So we're getting requests for SLAs in our services.
Yeah.
And I think at the enterprise level we get them. Gabe, you have a lot of enterprise. Do you get SLA requests a lot?
Okay, it depends who you're working with. Yes and no.
We're getting them for things that require that the more security issues there might be, the more requests we're getting for that.
Okay.
And we're getting safe harbor also for our international customers because we're here. So I don't know if you know safe harbor laws, but people overseas, they really want to know that their data is accessible by safe harbor. But that can tie into your SLA also. So there's just a few kind of follow-up points I wanted to follow up on, and I might address some of you one-man shops that I was just discussing. I know that it's easy to be frustrated. I'm here telling you that you've got to go out and do 200 more things that you didn't have to do yesterday if you want to compete at that level. But I think there's 2 things you kind of need to recognize, and this is what I mentioned earlier. Joomla hits that sweet spot, and I think we over-rely on Joomla because we just feel so passionately about it. I know I do, and it took me a long time to come to the realization that it wasn't appropriate for me to rely on the core for everything. In some cases it wasn't even desirable because there were better solutions that I could bolt on. The other this is a great slide. the other idea is that the more things we put in the core. Okay, so let me go back to my original comment. Let's put it in the core so we can be this much better, right? For everything we put in the core and make it simple for any Joomla newbie to implement, we devalue our expertise. We are all experts in this room, and experts from reading a JED review or vetting a JED vendor for an extension to figuring out what is the best solution for backups or all those things. There's huge value in that knowledge. And I think too many of the smaller shops kind of give those things out as, oh, of course we just do backups. But it's more than that. I mean, you come here, you meet the developer, you can go and talk to Nicholas, and if you have a problem with your backups, you can go and talk to the guy who authored your backup software. I mean, that is super, super valuable. And for everything that we take like that, and we want to shove into the core as a feature, okay, like you could do backups if you had a self-hosted Joomla solution, right? Mm-hmm. But that devalues your expertise. Okay, so don't be too worried necessarily that there's these other things that have to go in there or that you need to shove things in the core, because I think in the end that devalues what value you bring. And of course, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, and that's why this slide is here. And there's one last ray of hope. We finished our survey, basically the opposite question. For enterprise rollouts you did, where Joomla was not the solution in the end, what was the main reason you did not choose Joomla? I think I've underlined that there. Okay, and we have the same thing: ease of use, brand, cost, extensibility, features, licensing, and local expertise. Who thinks, let's get some shout outs. What do you think the most popular reason for not choosing Joomla is?
Brand.
Local expertise.
Local expertise. Yeah.
Local expertise by like a long shot. Okay, that represents an enormous opportunity for everyone in this room to go out and get that opportunity and make it aware in the communities that you live in that there's a local expert with a professional enterprise class service built on a solid extensible platform. And really, that's my message today. Thank you very much again.